What I'll do is I'll proceed in a way that I generally proceed, and I'll give you a briefing of the course in the first two classes. People who have studied with me earlier and those who are completely new, all of them have to be very, very patient for first two classes. In first two classes, you will not really get the grip of the course, but it will take you the patience, the determination, the alacrity of two classes to get hold on exactly what this course is about. Once we move from third class onwards, then you will understand what's going on and what is the philosophy of this paper. And you will get a lens to look at this paper. And every question, every topic, you will see through and through after the learning and the frameworks that we will develop in the first two class. So immediately things are not going to be under your belt, but you have to be very, very patient. We will go back and forth, back and forth. I'll take you ahead in this course and then bring you back to show you things that this is how it has to be looked upon. Then I'll take you forward again. This back and forth exercise we'll do 2-3 times in order to get settled down with the exact understanding and the philosophy of the course. So first two class, like a Sharif student, achhe bachche, you have to sit with discipline. And you do not have to expect much more than what you're getting linearly on one-to-one basis. Do not have to attempt to look at things very, very broadly. But you will get there. Eventually, you will get there, and it will happen sooner, very, very soon. So I just demand the patience and consistency in first 2 days. You will get enormous amount of content initially. You will have to go back home and prepare yourself on those content and come back in the next class. Things will move very rapidly as it's supposed to be in a revision class like this. So what is generally covered in 40 classes in foundation, we will try to do that in 7 classes. And then rest of the 4 classes, rigorous answer writing, question answer discussion, case studies. So it will take me around 10 to 11 class. It will take you around 10 to 11 class of attendance, and then afterwards, 2.5 hours of revision after every class. It will take you 2 test series and then 2 sessions with your mentor or with your faculty to get the feedback on that for you to be prepared fully for the coming mains exam. It will take you that amount of work. So after QIP, a lot of work will be left in terms of giving the test and then sitting with your mentor to identify what are the gaps. Even after studying so much, even after grasping so much, there will be gaps in answer writing still, and it is natural to have it. And when you fix that, then you get prepared to give the coming mains. Before I get on with the course, this is the syllabus, and you have to know your syllabus. As you understand, without the syllabus, giving the mains exam will be like swimming in the Pacific Ocean, and you won't get to the shore. You'll be lost. Things will seem as if everything under the sun is the syllabus to study this and that, everything. You won't have the grip as you had on the exam in your board exam. You were supremely confident on the morning of the board exam because you have covered the book. But here, there's no single book, and everything seems to be likely to be asked in the exam. If you do not know your syllabus, you're lost. In ethics, more so, because this is more of a static nature of the subject. So you have to know your syllabus very well. Very often, I'll keep bringing you back to the syllabus to show you how much you have done and what is left and the interconnectedness between them. But you can have a head start already to know your syllabus very, very well. The title of the paper, as is is Ethics, Integrity, and Aptitude. We'll spend good amount of time understanding as to why UPSC has chosen to name the paper as Ethics, Integrity, and Aptitude, because there are many courses on ethics in various universities in India and abroad, but none of the course has been named peculiarly like this, Ethics, Integrity, and Aptitude. So I'll take me 2 classes to take you to maneuver you through the 3 terms, ethics, integrity, and aptitude. And that will be little content dense. So you have to be very attentive and you have to be very enthusiastic to catch the content. Before I get started to tell you what ethics exactly is and how the discipline has developed henceforth the 4th century BC, but I'll have to give you a little bit of background. Not important for the exam, but very, very important for the feel of the paper and to understand the nuances of this paper. So I'm going to tell you, before ethics was developed as a discipline, science was already developed as a discipline. Science precedes ethics by 200 years at least as a discipline. Ethics was there. The norms of right and wrong was there when man landed foot on earth. Since then, man knows what to do and what not to do. So ethics as a nature of mankind was always present. But systematically, as a discipline, has been developed both in Eastern and Western philosophy by around 4th century BC, as much as we have documentation of it. But science, we know from 6th century BC. So in that way, science has preceded ethics as a subject, as a discipline by 200 years. So science was developed. We knew enough of chemistry. We knew astronomy. We had understanding of solar eclipse. We have understanding of lunar eclipse. We knew that underlining all material is something that is similar to all matters. We had the idea of monoism, not only in religion and philosophy, but also in science. And the first documented philosopher in Western philosophy is Thales. And Thales gave a principle that everything is made up of water, which obviously by the standard of today's science is absolutely wrong. But still, he's considered as the first philosopher for the reason that he gave the answer of modern sciences and modern curiosity, question of modern man, not from religion, but from reason. And that is what philosophy is. Philosophy is love for knowledge, not getting hold of knowledge, but pursuing the knowledge. And since he pursued the knowledge by his reason and he gave a principle, he's considered to be the first philosopher. The point I'm trying to make here, carefully understand. How come Thales had the curiosity that what exactly every matter is made up of? Why mankind had this idea that everything got to be made up of same thing? Like from modern standard science, we know that everything is made up of same thing. Those are electrons, protons, neutrons from the high school knowledge. Then you know that they're further divided into subparticles. But nevertheless, they are made up of same thing. It's just a rearrangement. They're numbers that matters, and that creates a difference of color, that creates a difference of density, that creates a difference of luster, appearance, everything, strength, tensility. But fundamentally, they are made up of same thing. Now, this universality was known to the people of ancient Greek back then, that there got to be something universal, universally present in everything, and universally constituting everything. So science, the principles as such, has a characteristics of universality, present everywhere and applies everywhere. And the first universal principle we got very late actually in science as well, that was given by Newton when he gave his principle of gravitation. So every material, this marker, if I drop every time, it will fall. Every time, the principle of gravitation will apply not only to this, any other object of mass. So this idea that there are got to be principles of nature that will always apply. From there, the motivation began to inquire into the question, can there also be principles for human conduct? That should always apply. If there are principles of nature, is there a possibility to have principles for human conduct, human behavior as well? And just like the planets revolve around the sun always, given a particular situation, we will behave in a particular way always. That's the thing. So basically, ethics is science of human behavior. And it will have, since it has the motivation of science, it will have the flavor of science. So we are looking for some principles that will always apply in human behavior. That is how the subject began. So I'll give you a workable definition of ethics, and from here, things will speed up. Ethics is standards and principles of right and wrong to judge and guide human behavior. The science of ethics is for human behavior. And these are standards and principles of right and wrong. The definition actually has many, many things in it. Let's go part by part. The first word written here is a standard, and standard and principles come together. Standards are basically special cases or special manifestation of broad principles. Standards could be based upon some principles. There are n number of standards that you would know from your knowledge of GS 1, 2, and 3. Having a universal basic income could be a standard of socialism. Marriage rituals, that marriage is not considered to be valid till the time the rituals are conducted, could be a traditional standard. Reservation system could also be a principle or a standard of social justice. MSP could be a standard for the nutritional health and nutrition in the country. Right to education, there could be a standard set, legal standard of 25% reservation in private schools. These things are from your GS 1, 2, and 3. And you have to intensively use GS 1, 2, and 3 as illustrations and examples in this paper, which I myself will be giving. But you can have more, you can fetch in more of your knowledge from GS 1, 2, and 3 to add more. But at least keep going through them. And you can test the PPT of a class before you come for the next class. Standards could be in a particular context. Standard could be the expression of broad principles in a particular context. So ethics are standards and the underlying principles of right and wrong. Now, I'll spend some time in telling you what principles are. Principles, as you understand from science, they are universal. And they applies regardless of the, like principle of gravitation will apply regardless which object you're analyzing. So there has to be some prime consideration that it has to have mass. If it has mass, then principle of gravitation will apply. Similarly, if it has charge, the principle of electrostatics will apply. At the nanoscale and below that, the principle of quantum mechanics will apply. So you have just some basic criteria, and then those principles will always apply. As long as we are dealing with human beings, the principles must always apply. They are our ethical principles or moral principles. From the exam perspective, there are 4 kinds of principles that we should have under our belt, and at various stages of the syllabus, we cover them in the foundation class. But here I'm giving you all of them, all of a sudden at one place. The first chapter has human values. Values themselves are principles. Like, for example, the principle of non-violence or ahimsa was an important principle of Gandhi. Principle of liberty is an important principle of J.S. Mill. Principle of freedom is an important principle for Abraham Lincoln. Values, human values themselves, they are also principles. Principles are what we use for decision making. They are the most important considerations in decision making. So the values that we do in the first chapter of syllabus, human values, they themselves are the principles. Then there are some normative principles. The values like tolerance, forgiveness, kindness, generosity, sympathy, empathy, compassion, all these values mentioned in the syllabus and otherwise that we cover as part of human values, they are also principles. Principles are what decide the behavior, that decides the outcome of an interaction. So if kindness is what you prioritize in dealing with people, then kindness becomes principles, something that will decide the outcome of an interaction. Like the interaction of 2 bodies, the outcome is according to the principle of gravitation. Similarly, if you always apply something in a particular context, that becomes principle. So as such, all the values, they all are principles for the purpose of our exam. Then there are other kind of principles that we quickly need to grasp. As you understand, I'll be giving you many things and cover the syllabus in 7 classes. So things will be very condensed. And this is broadly exactly what you require for answer writing. So you have to grasp it and you will have to memorize it before you come for the next class. Normative ethics is one of the branch of ethics that set the norms. As the name suggests, the norms are the rules. And they set some of the rules for human conduct. Broadly, in normative ethics, there are 8 things to be considered. Rights, virtue, justice, rule of law, duty-based conduct or deontology, utility, looking at the utility of the outcome, that is called as utilitarianism, common good, and consequentialism. I'll expand. I told you I'll go forward and then I'll come backward. I'll do this exercise 2-3 times. That's the way you will really settle down the content in yourself. These are broadly the subject, the literature of ethics has developed broadly 8 categories of norms for human behavior. Like what we should be focusing on. Should we focus on natural rights, fundamental rights, human rights? Or should we focus on virtues like justice, like integrity, like generosity, like freedom, like liberty, like temperance, like prudence, like wisdom? Or should we focus on the idea of justice? I'll explain you each of them one by one in the next slide. But looking at the third category of principles, there are certain principles given by individual philosophers themselves. They do not create a category of themselves, but in a study, in the work of philosophers, they develop their own independent principles. Like, for example, you must have done in your art and culture, Eightfold Path of Buddha. Now, Buddha's Eightfold Path has been given individually, independently by one thinker, one philosopher, Buddha himself. So when philosophers develop their own principles, they're also accounted as important moral principles in this subject. So here is a list of philosophy and philosophers and their principles, that for your purpose of exam, you have to know. Now, this ideally is studied in the 5th chapter of your syllabus, where the moral thinkers and philosophers from India and the world are mentioned. But it takes a lot of time to do it. We will not be doing that exercise because this is not a philosophy optional, and nobody is going to ask you a question on philosopher per se to compare and contrast the work of Plato and Aristotle. That kind of question is not asked. Question on philosophy directly is not asked. There will be situational question in which you will have to use philosophy. So we will not go through chapter 5 as such in QIP, but all the important content of chapter 5 I have distilled here. And this is the distilled content that you need to know. Gradually, I'll discuss them with you, but here I'll take you very slowly, actually what exactly these means. But this back and forth exercise, we will do multiple times. So even when the content is not grasped initially, it will happen over the course of 4, 5, 6 classes. You have to be very, very patient. I tell you, this is the easiest of, not easiest, second easiest paper in your mains. Easiest would be essay. This is the second easiest, and this is very, very scoring. The second most scoring as well after essay. It will fetch you laurels in 10 classes or 11 classes, 2 test series and 2 sessions with your mentor will get you there, really, trust me. Now, I'll go through these principles slowly, explaining you what they mean, but you'll have to memorize them. If you memorize them, then you'll be able to use them in the answers at the right place. Starting with Socrates, who is considered as the founder of moral philosophy in Western philosophy. One of the important principles of Socrates is that knowledge is equal to virtue. He said, knowing something takes you there. When you know what is right, then you also move towards what is right. This is the goodness of human nature. Human beings are not evil. See, if we would have been evil people, then knowingly we would do wrong. But the idea of Socrates was in the goodness of human nature that we do not do anything wrong knowingly. If you know the right thing, if you have the knowledge of good, then you do the good. And doing the good is called as virtue. So he equated knowledge with virtue. In Indian culture as well, the philosophy is to know the Brahma is to be the Brahma. To know the truth is to be the truth. Because if you know the truth, you move in that direction and you act in a moral way and you become godly and you shed your evil nature. So you become God. If you know the Brahma, then you are the Brahma. Knowing the God is being the God, meaning you become godly when you know the good things. The same idea Socrates also propounded, which is also there in Indian culture. Knowledge is equal to virtue. Now, these you may not immediately understand where we will be using it in case studies and answer writing. But everything in the PPT will be used during the course of discussing various questions. So without even if you do not understand their application, you need to memorize them voraciously in the beginning. So in the first 2-3 classes, you just have to do the mugging up job. Wo ho gaya, then answer writing will become very simple. After Socrates in Western philosophy, the major philosopher is Plato. And Plato has given 4 cardinal virtues. These are 4 cardinal virtues, meaning that the other virtues are derived out of these virtues. And one of the virtue, if it is missing, then the other virtues cannot stand. Other virtues do not have their independent understanding. Now, 4 cardinal virtues of Plato are wisdom, courage, temperance, and justice. Now, why these 4? Why not others? This eventually we will discuss gradually. I'm going to show you the broad picture from the top. So I'll show you little things so that you get the broader contour, and then we'll come to the specific details in the due course of time. But nevertheless, even if you do not understand the logic as to why Plato chose these 4 as the cardinal virtues, you still have to memorize them before you attend the next class. If you have that speed, you will pull it off in 11 classes. If you do not, then it's going to be problematic. Samajh mein aaye, nahi aaye, but aapko ratta lagana hai. It may sound very bad, but to clear the mains exam, things have to be on your fingertips. And you have to memorize the sentences. You have to think in terms of sentence and paragraph, not just in terms of words and individual terms. Aristotle has a principle that has to be applied always. So these are principles because they always have to be applied. It's called as golden mean principle. And he had a very important idea that I will keep on talking about and expanding, and things will dawn on you later on, that ethics is moderation. You do not have to go into the extremes. When you go into the extremes, what the problem is with going to the extreme is you having the view of only few things. You must have seen these bell curves in your school and your college. that if you go too far on the right or too far on the left, then the amplitude of whatever you're looking for decreases. The amplitude is highest in the midband. This is how nature behaves. Microorganism activity is like this. The photoelectronic the effect is like this. The transmission of energy is like this. The wave energy is like this. Nature everywhere behaves like this. Even the Boltzmann constant come from this kind of curve. The thermodynamics works based on this kind of nature. Nature behaves like this. And I have told you that ethics is inspired by science. That being the senior in terms of development of as a discipline. So ethics will assume the same nature as science has assumed. But this principle, golden mean principle, is very scientific. And all these, the physics and the microbiology that you've studied earlier, that also suggests the same thing. Don't go to the extreme, otherwise performance deteriorates. You are best performing when you are in the midband. And the reason is when you're in the midband, you have a broader view. You get hold of many more things than when you go to the extreme. When you go to the extreme, there are few things to look at. And when you look at few things, when you work with few things, then you are least efficient. For the reason, gradually, it's going to get unfolded. There'll be many mysteries. First two class show your damn patience. Be at best in showing patience in grasping the content in first two classes. And all of a sudden, the picture is going to become extremely clear, and then you're going to have fun from the third, fourth class. The similar idea is of Buddha, of not going into the extreme, avoiding the extremes. There is a school of thought in ancient Greek philosophy called as Epicureanism. And according to Epicureanism, pleasure is the highest good. But this pleasure is not bodily pleasure. This is not sensuous pleasure. This pleasure is defined as a psychological pleasure. The pleasure that we have when we read the book, the pleasure that we get through friendship, the pleasure that we get by doing the moral action, by rendering justice. That pleasure is, in that sense, the meaning of the word pleasure has to be taken here. Pleasure is the highest good. Because this pleasure, psychological pleasure, we get by doing the right thing. Like, for example, an old lady, you help her cross the road, you'll feel good. You do little things for others. You just help somebody pick up the marker or the rubber or eraser, your neighbors, and you'll feel good about it. Human beings are naturally inclined to follow the good. And when we follow the good, then our psychology's purpose is fulfilled. And that naturally makes us happy. So this pleasure is in that sense. So if you're feeling the pleasure, then that is the highest good, meaning you are doing the right thing. When we lie, we feel anxious. We feel fearful. And that is a psychological pain because it is inherently a wrong thing. When we do our inherently moral thing, then inherently we feel good. This is human psychology. And tapping on that psychology, the school of thought developed this idea that when you are feeling uplifted, morally uplifted, then you are on the right path. So pleasure is the highest good. Nothing else is required for the purpose of exam from the school of thought Epicureanism. Stoicism has the idea that you have to get rid of destructive emotions. So you have to maintain your self-control, cultivate self-control, and overcome emotions. This is the Stoic idea. In Stoicism, there's no space for emotions. Emotions is considered to be destructive. Emotion is considered to be meddling with your rational judgment. So according to Stoicism, when you talk about emotional intelligence or control on an emotion, we can come to this idea of Stoicism of having supreme self-control on ourselves. There are other principles of Immanuel Kant, and he famously gave very important principle, which was called as categorical imperative. There are three categorical imperatives that I might have written on the other slide. Three categorical imperatives that Immanuel Kant has given. The first categorical imperative is only act in a way that your action can be converted into a universal moral law. And there are two more. Since it's not written here, I won't burden you with it. Later on, in the further other slides, it must have been written. I'll take it up from there. Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative, Jeremy Bentham has the idea of utilitarianism. And the idea of utilitarianism is to look for the greatest good for the greatest number. This was a little contentious school of thought. And this was not considered as a moral principle for a long time. But with some modifications attempted by his student and his kind of intellectual hire, J.S. Mill, Utilitarianism got to be accepted as a moral principle. The greatest good for the greatest number is what is very practically done in current times. For example, the public projects which requires land acquisition. Some people will have to be relocated. Some people have to be displaced. And they will have immense amount of suffering. Not only their livelihood will be lost, their way of life will be lost. In a new place, they will not feel the belongingness, but still they'll have to move. The rest of the population would want them to move. And it's too bad for you, but you will have to move. That is the attitude that majority of the people will have. Why? Because the public project is irresistible. It is too beneficial for the society, whether that's a dam or a metro project or a railway or a highway. So we do it, regardless some people suffer. Because society as a whole progresses. And the idea of utilitarianism is to look at society as unit, not as individuals as unit. Please come. So if society improves, the job is done. You do not have to look at the individual things. For example, when you look at the individual unit, you do not look at different body parts. Even if you're working very hard and your hands are paining, you're still working. Because overall, the benefit to the body is going to come. Maybe in terms of money or the exercise or the physical strength, whatever. You do not look at the individual body parts, do you? You look as a whole. So the optics here is different. You look at society as a whole and not as at individuals. And from that perspective, if society becomes better, then that is moral. So this is the principle of having the greatest good for the greatest number. John Rawls also had principles. There are two important principles of John Rawls. John Rawls is a philosopher of very modern time. His first book was published in 1971. And in that book, he has given two important principles. Equal basic liberties, that's how we paraphrase the first principle, and the difference principle, that's how we paraphrase the second principle. I have the expanded version of it in the next slide. We'll talk about it later. But ye cheezein aapko yaad rehni chahiye, the name of the philosophers and the name of the principles, so that you can ready-made use it in the answer. You have to be content ready before you attempt answer writing. You have to be very, very polished with the content. So these, then you can use Friedrich Nietzsche, you can use Sartre, you can use Martha Nussbaum, you can use Peter Singer. These are modern philosophers. Peter Singer, he's still alive. So these are philosophical principles, important principles given by individual philosophers, not belonging to a category of thought in the discipline, but individually given by the philosophers, although you can pull it up into one or the other category, but they are so important that they need special mention. So in answers as well, we'll be specially mentioning them. So this is one of the three aspects of ethics. And there is another important category from where the principle comes. Principle comes from administration as well. Public administration is a separate discipline, and public administration is also considered to have a separate kind of morality. That UPSC has twice asked the question that bureaucratic morality could be very different from individual morality. And in that sense, there are certain principles especially developed for administration. And your syllabus has named some of the principles, hasn't named many other principles, but these are the list of principles that broadly has to be covered under public administration. So I have named them as administrative principles, fundamentally beginning with social contract. In social contract, the main focus, the purpose and the meaning, both of administration is public service. Administration comes from the root word administar, and administar means to serve. To serve means to work for the well-being, human well-being. That means work for the interest of public citizens. So public interest is the underlying goal of administration. So it has to be applied everywhere. What is applied everywhere becomes a principle. So if administration in every decision, in every action, in every exercise of authority, in every policy formulation, always have to consider public interest, then that becomes principle because it applies everywhere. Similarly, other ideas like trusteeship, accountability, probity, transparency, rule of law, participatory governance, decentralization, sharing of sovereignty, neutrality, responsiveness, timeliness, and on and on. These are the important things that you have to get hold of, so that when you're writing a question on administrative practice, these will be the focus areas. These will become your subheadings. These are the coordinates using which you will analyze the issue. Unless you have them under your belt, you are not ready to analyze the issue. You're not ready to write the answer. I have to spend some time discussing each one of them, which I will do once I come back. I told you it will go backward and forward, and that is the way to learn, as Plato has suggested in his book, The Republic. In The Republic, has suggested a mechanism where you have to go higher in consciousness and come back and see the ground reality. And then again, go higher in consciousness and come back, see the ground reality. With multiple iterations, you actually get to the top. And same thing we'll adopt here. So I'm giving you a rough sketchy idea. Then we will come back supposedly to discuss each one of them as to what is meant by social contract and what are the ideas of public interest later on. But you have to get them under your belt when you come for the next class. If I ask you what are principles, if I ask you, I'll tell you, Alankrit, what probity is. I told you I'll do backward and forward. So when I come backward, then there would be a principle of probity here. I'll explain each term to you again. But tomorrow, what I would expect is you would know that there are 4 categories of principles that we did, and you will be able to name them. The values, the normative principles, the philosophical principles, and the administrative principles. इतना अगर आपको आता नहीं है ना, तो फिर आप आगे बढ़ नहीं पाएंगे. If you do not have the terms and phrases under your belt, then you would not be able to talk, you won't be able to think, you won't be able to write. So you'll be stuck. जहाँ थे आप शुरुआत में 10 क्लास के एंड में भी वहीं रह जाएंगे. So you have to start mugging things up. And you have to memorize it. Things should become intuitive. It should become part of your vocabulary. In normative ethics, see, here there are many principles. I have written it again in a more expansive way. Normative ethics. This right, virtue, justice, rule of law, deontology, utilitarianism, common good, consequentialism. Now, what these are, I'm going to give you a very quick briefing as to what these 8 of them are. Especially for students who are new, others will already know, I suppose, and you will also recall. The idea of right-based approach is all 8 of them do not have different goals. They all have the same goals. What are the goals? The goals are the goals of ethics, which is human well-being. That is the ultimate goal. Now, the question is, what should you focus on as a sovereign authority or as a major institution in the society so that you get the desired goal? Should you focus on implementing the laws? Should you focus on doing the duties? Should you focus on developing virtues? Should you focus on protecting the rights? What should be the main principle of delivering justice or bringing well-being? That is the only point of difference in these 8 approaches. But otherwise, the goal of all principles will be what? Human well-being. Good. Shared humanity. Very good. You have to start picking the terms and start using it and start. Good. Very good. Very good. I haven't heard, but I think that you're right. Because she's wearing the mask. Moral universalism. Correct. See, I knew you were right. So I'm going to give you a briefing as to how these differ in their focus, but not in the goal. All right. So little bit of understanding. This is not a theory class, and as much as you study in foundation class, all of it is not important for answer writing. This is going to be a course oriented towards answer writing. So I'm going to give you a brief content and quickly so that we can get on with the question answer discussion. The idea of rights-based approach is that human beings are born, everybody is born with some natural rights, and those natural rights exist prior to and independent of the sovereign. And since it precedes the existence of sovereign, development of governance and administration. So the main job of administration is to protect the natural rights of citizens. And the idea is, if rights are protected, then people will be allowed to grow. And they will be satisfied. They'll be contented. If you're satisfied and contented, then you will cooperate. You will perform your duty. So deontology will be taken care of if the rights are protected. You'll become law-abiding citizen. Rule of law will be taken care of if the rights are protected. You will do charities, you'll cooperate with others, you'll be tolerant to others. So virtues will be taken care of if rights are protected. So one will ensure that the other 7 are taken care of. That's how each 8 of them will exist. But the thing is, where should I focus? Should I focus on schools and institutions to develop virtues among students? Or should I tell them about their civic duties so that the rules and the regulations are followed so that the rule of law is ensured? Or what else should I do? Or should, as a democracy, I should make a constitution and grant fundamental rights to all? I should have right to remedy under Article 32 for the protection of those fundamental rights. And I should adjudicate and deliver justice when rights are violated. I have to decide my priority. Modern constitutional democracies, they have gone with rights-based approach. So has India. In India, the constitution, quickly after talking about India, that is Bharat, and then who will be the citizens, the first business that this constitution takes up is discussing the fundamental rights. Before discussing the parliament and the state legislature and the working of judiciary and working of governor and president's role and this and that, the first thing that the constitution does is to discuss fundamental rights. And that is rights-based approach. The first thing is to declare right, and then talk about in case of violation of right. Article 13 talks of judicial review. Article 32 talks about constitutional remedy. So it's all about focused on right, and other business comes later on. So this is the rights approach, and it is the thinking of John Locke that if things done this way, then things will be all fine. When your rights are protected, then you are ready to cooperate. Then rule of law will be protected, virtues will be protected, deontology will be protected. But this is the right approach to become a functional society. So this is called as rights-based approach. The chief proponent of this is John Locke. But you'll find the support in the work of other philosophers as well, like Aristotle. Aristotle is the chief proponent of virtue-based approach. But this is what Aristotle said. The main goal of the state is to not make men virtuous, but to protect their rights. That is why state exists. That is why this elaborate bureaucracy machinery exists, to protect citizens' right. And there are goodness that comes when the protection of right happens. You become more civic, you become more moral, you become more virtuous, you follow the law, and other things are taken care of. So this is what modern democracy has adopted as the best approach to become a functional, thriving democracy society. This is rights-based approach. You'll see how these things are applied in the answer very soon. But just keep grasping the content that will be there in the PPT. Regurgitate it, revise it, write it to see how much you have memorized, and come prepared in the next class. The second approach in ethics is virtue. And the chief proponent of virtue-based approach is Aristotle. Aristotle has famously remarked that the moral behavior comes from a settled moral character. The idea of Aristotle is if you make people moral in their character, then everything will be taken care of. Meaning they will understand the law, implement the law, understand their duties, fulfill their duties. So rule of law or deontology will come if you are virtuous. If you are not virtuous and state makes the law, then you can circumvent the law. You can find the loophole in the law. Rule of law doesn't come by making good laws. Rule of law actually come by making men virtuous. So his overall idea is that if you make men virtuous, then other ideas will be naturally implemented. So he wanted to focus on virtues. Moral behavior comes from a settled moral character. And moral excellence comes as a result of habit. Virtues are habitual values. When you develop habit, that means you develop virtues. The difference between value and virtue is values are abstract principles, like honesty is a value. You understand the concept of honesty. You read about honesty, you'll get to know what honesty is. So you know the principle of honesty. But when you start practicing honesty, then that becomes virtue. When it has become the habit of you to be honest, then that has become virtue. He says, till the time we convert the values into virtues through habit, then we are not going to become moral. So the thing is that Aristotle sincerely believed in goodness of human nature. And when we are good, we have the capacity, we just have to unlock that capacity. And that unlocking that capacity is developing moral excellence through habit. Habit develops virtues. So the point is that if we hone our virtues, then we'll become moral agents. Then we'll become responsible citizens. We'll fulfill our civic duties. We will read about laws, follow the laws, and the rest of the things will be taken care of. So it's just the focus where you have, not the end goal. End goal is human well-being for all. Similarly, the focus of justice-based approach is a little different. See, when you give rights to citizens, you can give plethora of rights. You can have right to religion, you can have right to live in a pollution-free environment, you can have right to life and right to movement, freedom of speech and expression, and all of these can be conflicting. When they conflict, then you're stuck in rights-based approach. Also, there could be multiplicity of virtues. You can have objectivity as your virtue. You can have empathy as your virtue. And these two can conflict. Then you're stuck again. So if you only go by rights-based approach or you only go by virtue-based approach, chances are that you keep getting stuck. there's a third school of thought that solves the problem, which we call as justice-based approach. Justice comes from the root word jus, and jus means to synthesize. Synthesize or to harmonize or to weave things in the common thread. And when we do that, then it is said that justice is rendered. Justice, the general definition of justice is giving people their due. But different people have different dues. Some may come to the due of right to practice their religion, and some can come with a due that right to live in a pollution-free environment. Some can come with a due to right to protect their religious sentiment, and some can come with a due to right to freedom of speech and expression. Different people will have different due. How will you give due to everybody? And because justice is required for all, the only possible way in which all can get their due is through synthesis. If you can synthesize, if you can harmonize the need aspiration of one with the need aspiration of others, only then you can get the due. And later on, I'll show you the schematic diagram in terms of, in the context of John Rawls. John Rawls in his book has said that there are two good. At individual level, the good is liberty. And at social level, the good is equality. And liberty, more than often, contradicts with the concept of equality. For example, you must be given liberty to work as hard as you can, and then you can earn as much as you can. But the thing is that you know that we have progressive taxation system. The rich are taxed more. But why should that be the case? Why should all not be taxed in the same way? Let's suppose 10% for everybody. Since I'm working hard, then I'm being penalized for my hard work. I haven't done anything wrong, considering that I haven't used any kind of lobbying on any kind of bribery. I have got things on merit and I have got rich. So in that case, theoretically, I shouldn't be taxed more if you look purely from the perspective of liberty. But in the interest of equality, rich are taxed more. Correct? Because there has to be synthesis of two claims. One of the claim is of equality, the other claim is of liberty. Until the time you can synthesize two conflicting claims, so you will allow people to become billionaires. There are billionaires in India, but yet they have to pay taxes. Theoretically, practically, they don't pay any tax. But when this happens, that is justice. When you synthesize two conflicting standards, two conflicting things, then that is justice. You do understand only by going with rights-based approach or virtue-based approach, you will very soon get stuck with your two virtues or the two rights that you yourself have or rights of yours and others. And then to clear the deadlock, you require a justice-based approach, which requires the standards to be synthesized. And these standards, I've given you a special case from the work of John Rawls of synthesizing liberty and equality, but these two could be anything. These two could be objectivity and empathy. These two could be environmental ethics and economic ethics of profitability and efficiency. These two could be any conflicting idea. And when you synthesize two conflicting idea, that is called as justice. This is the understanding we will carry forward for the rest of the class as to concerning justice. This is what we understand of justice coming from the root word just to synthesize. And everything is getting funneled into a larger idea that you will sooner understand. Just be very, very patient for first two classes and avoid asking unnecessary questions. Try to grasp what I'm telling you. And if you do not understand, you can ask things from that, but just get hold of what I have to tell you. I am carrying very rich content. So try to absorb that, and afterwards, on a higher order, you can ask other things. The fourth normative principle that I have here is rule of law. Rule of law means that the law will rule. Now, earlier kings used to rule, but in the modern times, we understand that the law has to rule. The question is, the king used to rule because the king was the agent of God. So whatever he says has to be followed without question. So that's the way the king was able to rule. But here, that's not the idea. We do not assign any divinity to any of the political representatives. So still, they're able to rule. Sorry, not the political representatives, the law made by them. Is it still, we do not consider any divinity in the law. We do not think that law is coming from a divine source. But still, law carry the same weight, same force. But law is still able to rule because law is accepted by the people themselves. The rule of law means that the law will rule. So whatever the law commands, you have to do it. If the tax are increased, you will pay more tax. If the cess is introduced, you will pay more cess. Whatever the law says, you will do it. Now, how does that happen? It happens only in the condition that you accept the law. Whatever the law says, if that is also acceptable to you, then you will be willing to follow the law. And since you are following the law, so law is able to implement itself. Correct? And that's how the rule of law is. Now, why will you follow the law? You will follow the law because you will respect the law. This reasoning is that of Immanuel Kant, the idea that I'm taking you through. Law is an ordinance of reason. This is the definition that we will take up later in the course as well. Ordinance means commandment, order given by sovereign authority. But the order has to be based on reason. Necessarily, this is a characteristic of law. Law is an ordinance of reason. Since it is an ordinance of reason, so it is respectable. And there's a catch here that Kant beautifully summarized. Reason extracts respect for us, from us, for itself. Reason extracts respect from us for itself. Whatever is reasonable seems respectable as well. If somebody is arguing something in a rational manner, even if you do not immediately agree, but at the heart of the heart, you know that he's right. The rational arguments are very persuasive. If somebody is doing the right thing, even if that is not bringing you benefit or causing you harm in the immediate terms, but you are still respectable. You're respectable to your father when he scolds you because you know he's doing the right thing. He's being reasonable. He's doing things in your interest. Whatever is reasonable, man being a rational creature is attracted towards it. And we pay respect to reason. So if the law is based on reason, then we pay respect to the law. With that respect comes sense of dutifulness. And with this sense of dutifulness, we abide by it, we follow it. And since we naturally follow the law, so the law is able to rule over us. So for law to be able to rule, law must be reasonable. This is the idea of rule of law. Law has to be reasonable. Edward Coke said, for the law to be respectable, for the law to be respected, it must first become respectable. As Gandhi has said, that unjust law is itself a species of violence. So law is to be respected only when it is based on reason. And law will be implemented only when it is based on reason. That is the short, sweet idea of rule of law. So much is enough, more than enough, for the purpose of writing the answer. Then the other approach in the normative ethics is deontology. Deontology means you will fulfill the action, do the action only from the purpose, the intention of your duty, nothing else. Like you can do the action for multiplicity of reasons. Maybe because you have a virtue of honesty, and you can go by the principle that honesty is my best policy. So in a given situation, you will be honest. So that means you're following your virtue, all right? But you can also be consequentialist in your approach. You can say that being honest brings such a good. So being utilitarian or being consequentialist, you are being honest. But Kant has a different idea. He said that an action has moral worth if and only if it is done from duty. Not from virtue, not from consequences, not by purpose of rule of law, but as a matter of duty. If you think that you're duty bound to do it, and then you are doing it, only then the action can be considered moral. If you're doing it because you're looking for a motive, for a purpose, for a benefit, then that action is not moral action because you're not doing it for the sake of morality. You're doing it for the sake of some purpose, some motive, some inclination. So moral worth and of an action is only if you do the action for the sake of the action, nothing else. Like neki kar dariya mein dal. You have heard the phrase, kai ko dariya mein dal. Matlab bhul jao. Don't look at the consequence. Don't look at the benefit. Because your job was to do the prophetic job, the virtuous job. And after their words, don't look at any consequences. Because it was your job, you have done your job, and you have done the job for the sake of doing the job, nothing else. So that's what Kant is saying. If you have that kind of intention, then only you are a moral person. If you look for anything else here and there, over and above the moral action, then that is not morality. That is looking for a purpose, for a motive, for benefit, any kind of benefit. So the moral worth, you have to memorize these sentences. Sab ke sab, kahin na kahin answer mein chepna hoga. You have to be thorough with the vocabulary, of the content given in the slide. Then we have utilitarianism. Utilitarianism is in contrast to deontology. Bentham worked in contrast with Immanuel Kant. And in the idea of utilitarianism, you do look at the consequence. Kant has restricted looking at the consequence. Don't look at the consequences. Just look at the moral action, and you're doing the action for the sake of the action. Maybe at times the result won't be right. For example, you know that as a medical health expert, you have to administer vaccination. But in every vaccine, no matter for what purpose it is, 1 in 1 lakh goes wrong. There's a side effect. But what will you do? As a doctor, what will you do? Will you administer or not? You'll always administer. So when you do not have the consideration on, even if when something goes wrong, according to Kant, that's not on you. That's not on you. That's on the moral law. And in the long term, things will do the self-correction. So you do things as per your duty. Sometimes you can also get the wrong kind of result, but you do not have to have any kind of consideration. Bentham suggested we must have active consideration for the consequences. And rather, that should be the sole criteria for the action. Something which is yielding result, pleasure, happiness, well-being to the maximum amount, that thing should be considered as moral. And something which is not, which is dormant in the immediate term, then that is not moral. So this is very opposite, pole opposite to Kant, as Bentham was, pole opposite, utilitarianism is pole opposite to deontology. So in deontology, we look at the consequences, and we try to maximize the pleasure or happiness and minimize the pain and suffering. So for example, land acquisition will be done. Project in the area has to come because that will get good to society. But after 2013 amendment of Land Acquisition Act, you know that the title of the act is very, very long. Land acquisition, transparency, rehabilitation, resettlement, fair compensation also is there. Land acquisition and fair compensation, transparency, rehabilitation, and resettlement act. That means you have to give fair compensation 3 times the market price. You have to be transparent about the project. EIA and SIA has to be done. And you have to carry forward the rehabilitation and resettlement of people getting displaced. That is minimization of pain. So apart from looking for maximization of pleasure, you must also minimize the pain. When will you be able to minimize the pain? When you are virtuous, when you feel for people. When we apply rule of law, if the compensation is 3 times, you have to give 3 times. And if the procedure requires EIA or SIA to be done, you conduct it properly. When the rule of law operates, then utilitarianism will operate. When virtue approach operates, then utilitarianism will operate. When you try to protect the rights, then utilitarianism will operate. So one is not free of others, and only in presence of others, the strength of one increases. So, but that's the idea of utilitarianism. Then we have the idea of common good. The idea of common good is very similar to the idea of Sarvodaya of Gandhiji. Sarvo means all, Udaya means development. Development of all is Sarvodaya, which was inspired by Leo Tolstoy's idea of unto the last. Unto the last means reaching to the last person in the society. When you reach to the last, then you have reached to others as well. And then the administrative span covers everybody. That is the idea of common good. Now, common good is also looking at consequences. And common good is a special case of utilitarianism. In utilitarianism, we are looking for maximum good. But in common good, we are looking for good of all. There will be no exception. You're developing for example, free healthcare system. That is for all. Free education is for all. Free electricity is for all. Roads and highways are for all. There is no exception. You're not doing it for maximum, but rather you're doing it for all. They come very close. It's a rather more theoretical idea of common good. More practical idea is utilitarianism, because even if you're constructing a project which is for common good, transitionally, at least some people will be displaced. Some people will lose a job. For Delhi Metro project, when it was started way back, then the auto rickshaw drivers, they were doing protest because they will lose their livelihood after the metro project. So, but Delhi Metro is a common good. Everybody can take the benefit of it because there are translators, not translators, but we have escalators, we have lift. It is accessible to also differently abled and elderly people. Everybody can access it. Since everybody can access it, it has a nature of common good. But transitionary, when the project was being developed, then there were protests and some people had a threat from the project. So we can say that we were closer to being utilitarian than common good, at least in the transition. And the eighth approach is consequentialist approach. Consequentialist approach is looking at the consequences. These two are also consequentialist approach, utilitarianism and common good. But they are special kind of consequentialist approach, so we mention them especially. In general consequentialism, we look at the consequences, and the philosophy is ends are more important than means. Yeah, Machiavelli, he also had this idea, but this is a general idea of consequentialism. But Machiavelli had no regard for means at all. But here there are means and ends both, but the precedence will be given to ends. But you take care of means as well. Like land acquisition to hoke rahega. But then you look for the means to reduce the suffering by giving fair compensation and other things. But okay, so these are the ideas. Now you will have very well, you can connect things. Now you are very well placed to move forward. So far, what I have done is I have touched about ethics. I have given you the definition of ethics as a standards and principles of right and wrong to judge and guide human behavior. Then we have spent good amount of time discussing what are the principles. And having hold of that content will help you a lot in writing the answers. And a small exhibit of that I'm showing you here. But fuller discussion will happen, and I'll take more questions once I have introduced all three terms: ethics, integrity, and aptitude. Look at discussion from 2014. What are the basic principles of public life? Illustrate any three of these with suitable examples. What are the basic principles? And this is one of the pet questions in the exam. They will ask you principle of this and principle of that, principle of this and principle of that. But you have to understand that principles are universal. Okay, and principles are not developed particularly for a particular context. Rather, context will find the expression of the principles. So if they ask the principles remain the same, and you know all the principles. The principles we have done so far, they are the principles that you have to use for the purpose of exam. And there are 4 of them. You can mention values, you can mention normative principles, philosophical principles, and administrative principles. So generally, when they ask principles, you should prefer choosing from all the 4 boxes. So give me some principles. If you go with values, you can tell me the principles in public life should be tolerance, empathy, compassion, impartiality, non-partisanship, kindness, forgiveness, as much as you can, not as much as you can, but you have to resist and use only 2. But you have a whole range of options in your hand. अब देखो आंसर राइटिंग बड़ा आसान हो जाएगा, and gradually you will realize that you will master it very soon if you just be with me and do as I am telling you. Then you go with normative principles. Remember the normative principles: rights, virtue, justice, rule of law, deontology, utilitarianism, common good, consequentialism. In your opinion, which 2 will you take in public life? Common good sounds good.
Deontology and
rule of law. Utilitarianism actually is very common in administration, and in public life, generally, we try to serve as many people as possible. And that tendency is utilitarianism. But you can choose many. You can choose as much as you can. I'll give you more examples, and the PPT that I'll give you will be carrying more content than we are discussing in terms of examples only, not theory. Then you can use some philosophical principles. You can say that you will use the idea of knowledge is equal to virtue of Socrates, and you would like to seek knowledge, meaning ground realities as a public figure, knowledge of the aspirations of all people. Or you can say you'll go with cardinal virtues of Plato, Asa. Or you can pick any of them that you like, but try to have a flavor. And you must also pick from administrative principles like public interest, trusteeship. In public life, it's very important to practice accountability, probity, participatory governance, responsiveness, accessibility, reliability, competence. You have this range. You have to memorize it as soon as you can. And then you'll be well placed to write the answers. You'll feel the strength. There'll be no dearth of content. आप ज़्यादा ही लिख दोगे, you'll get the remark कि content कम करो. You may have to morph it, but it will not be the case that you see a question and you're blank. You'll be filled with content. Look at this question of 2019. Explain the basic principles of citizen charter movement and bring out its importance. So the second part I'm not doing now. I'm only interested right now in the basic principles of citizen charter or citizen charter movement. So the thing is that you do not have to think, okay, what were the principles of citizen charter? We haven't done it. Principles are not specific to a particular tool. Like when RTI will be developed, then the principles will not be born with RTI or with RTE. Principles are already existing, and we have to express those principles in a particular tool. So the principles of citizen charter will not be born with the concept of citizen charter. Principles are all the principles we have seen. There are no more principles for the purpose of this exam. They are all the principles. So when they ask you principle for citizen charter or principle for work culture or principle of RTI, they're not going to be specific principles tied with the topic. That's the beauty. The exam is of very general nature, and so is the nature of this discipline. So you do not have to be surprised कि ये क्या पूछ लिया है. The principle of citizen charter will come from the same reservoir of principles as we have done. So you have to memorize the 4 boxes to get started. To get started, you have to know these. Now you pick again. For citizen charter, if you have rough idea of what citizen charter is, citizen charter are basically promise of standards of goods and service that the organization will deliver. बस इतना ही है. So for that, what principle will you pick? Dedication, extremely well. For citizen charter, you will have the principle of dedication to deliver on the promise. Very good. Excellent. Integrity also correct. Yes, Arshita, integrity. And compassion. You can pick any of them with proper justification or one-line explanation. Impartiality, non-partisanship. उसमें आप किसी को भी पढ़ोगे आपको लगेगा नहीं इसको छोड़ो कि नहीं, आपको लगेगा सब ले ले. आपके पास कंटेंट, you will have a problem of plenty. कंटेंट बहुत ज्यादा हो जाएगा आपके पास, and you have to trim it down. So, but you can pick and choose. Okay, I'll come back again to give you a one-liner definition and examples and many other things, but I'm taking you through the bird's eye view to show you the larger thing, and nitty-gritty will do in later on. Then for citizen charter, you can pick things from here. Rights, very good. Citizen charter is for service delivery. Service delivery is to protect human rights. Correct. Very good. Excellent. Deontology, it's your duty as an administrator to deliver because your duty is to serve the people. So you can write a one-liner proper explanation why you're choosing rights or why you're choosing justice. That's it. But the main coordinates of your thought process and the subheading of your answer will be these. And pick something from here. Equal basic liberty of John Rawls. बहुत बढ़िया. Very, very well. Who was it? अरे वाह, very nice. Very, very nice. Go ahead, give me something more suitable to citizen charter. Capability approach you can take. All right. Very nice. जब ये आप रट लोगे ना तो आपके जबान से अपने आप बाहर निकलेगा. Till the time you haven't memorized and internalized it, things will not be intuitive in thinking or speaking or writing. You have to regurgitate it when you go back, and you have to memorize it and voraciously know things when you come back. This is a basic introduction to ethics. But from here, we'll go to the topic from ethics to integrity, and I'll establish a connection, and there are many things to understand there. First of all, let me bring you back to the definition of ethics. Ethics is a standards and principles. Okay, so we have worked on standards and we have largely worked on principles. This part is done. Of right and wrong. Now there's a third box in the definition which needs a little bit of understanding, and that will enrich your content and will give you an edge for answer writing. The question is, what is right? Standards and principles of right, but we need to understand what are the things which are generally considered as right. What are right things? There are many right things. And Plato ultimately has tried to explain in his book, The Republic, that what is right thing to be done. And it took him 10 books. This book, the Republic, has 10 volumes. And in those 10 volumes, precisely discuss only few questions, like what is justice, why it is important to intrinsically practice justice, and what is considered to be just. So what is considered to be just or what is considered to be right, these are translations that we do. The idea of justice in the Greek language is very broad, not the idea of justice delivery by the state as we understand in modern times. So the justice is same as morality, which is same as the idea of the good, which is same as the idea of the right. So what is right for human beings to do? That is a question that has been taken up there. And brilliantly, Plato has explained in the book what is right, and I'll gauge a small peek I'm going to present now. First of all, is this generally very intuitive that in a human-centric world, what is right is whatever leads to human well-being. This is one of the ultimate thing that all society, all organization, all system, all laws, all philosophy, all public administration, all psychology, all sociology, all anthropology is working for, is for human well-being. So all principles of ethics, all standards of ethics should result in human well-being. Then it will be considered to be right. Now, there are some ancillary things, what is meant by human well-being. One of the things important in philosophy and ethics is happiness. If human being feels satisfied, content, happy, blissful, without anxiety, stress, disharmony, non-coherence, then that is a state of happiness. So happiness is very closely associated with human well-being. And then there are other ideas of human well-being, which is a shared humanity. Shared humanity meaning our problems, our aspirations, our goals, and our capability all are shared. And we have to be seen ourselves as one humanity. This is also the idea of what is right. The idea of right is also of justice, that giving people their due. I have told you earlier that justice comes from the root word jus, which means to synthesize. This is a short definition given by Aristotle, that giving people their due. But the question is, how will you be able to give people their due? Because different people have claims to different dues. But it can come only with synthesis. So justice can be delivered only when you do the balancing act, synthesizing act of interest of all. So what is right is to balance the interest of all. So reservation becomes a moral act. Reservation is a right thing to do, because although some people do get harmed by it, because you working as hard and getting as much marks as the other person getting the benefit of reservation, you will not be qualified. But others with lower cutoff will be qualified. Is it right or wrong? Morally speaking, it is right. It is right, but other things have to be taken care of. It has to work with impartiality and objectivity. Only those who need help should be given help. The community who has progressed already and has produced enormous number of IAS and IPS and others government officers, now reservation must go. If you have objectivity and only those are getting the benefit of reservation who really needs reservation with impartiality and fairness, then it is moral. Why? Because one of the things that we understand from right is balancing the interest of all. Due must be given to all. And in that process of giving due to all, there has to be a balancing act. So this is also the right thing. And administratively, all these things are subsumed in the idea of ethical governance. And Platonic language, if I use, then what is right, the symbol of right or the symbol of ultimate good or justice is the sun. In his book, he has used the metaphor of the sun. And as the sun looks at the solar system from the top and it covers everything and illuminates all part, that is the idea of good. Good is what considers all. Good is what benefits all. Good is what creates harmony in all. And there are other ideas that it is also the source of livelihood. It's also the source of thriving ideas and sustenance. But the chief idea that Plato puts forward ultimately towards the end of the book is this. We have to work with the idea of good, which is the idea of sun covering the entire solar system from the top. So when you increase your expanse, when you consider more and more things together and harmonize them and synthesize them and go together with many ideas, that is the good, or that is the right. And that is in psychology called as conscience. Conscience is considering all other human beings as ours. And that is working with the idea of sun. Like the sun covers the entire solar system, not missing on any part, so as a human, we have to, if conduct ourselves as the goodness of the sun, we have to cover all humans under our expanse, not allowing anybody to fall behind. That idea of good of republic of Plato is the idea of inclusion of all, like the sun does. An idea of inclusion of all psychologically is called as conscience. Conscience is considering all human beings as yours, considering others as our other. Yes, Kiran, absolutely. So this is what is considered to be right for human being. And this is the idea of book, ultimately the great idea Plato put forward in his book, The Republic. So standards and principles of right and wrong. Now you have understood what is right. Right is to work like the sun. Right is to be inclusive. Right is to be fair, impartial. Right is to balance the interest of all. Right is to include everybody, to go to the last person and work for Sarvodaya or ethical governance. Right is to have the vision of one humanity, shared humanity. Or to, this is philosophically speaking, psychologically speaking, having awakened conscience, considering every human being as our part, considering others as our other, ourself as part of others, others as part of ourselves, considering ourselves in union with every human being. This is the right thing, okay, which is in the definition of ethics. So the standards and principles we develop already has a stated goal from the understanding of what is right or what is good. So the principles that we talked about, they all will be channelized for these ultimate goals. Though these are the end goal of ethics. This is where ethics finally ends. This is an introduction to ethics. Now, there are other things that I'll talk about. Once I'll go through integrity and aptitude as well, I'll bring you back to the topic of ethics to show you more nuances. For now, there are 3 characteristics of ethics that we'll go with. There are other characteristics I'll introduce later in the course. Right now, I'll go with universality, contextuality, and the obligation to follow ethics. Obligation to follow ethics. See, universality, as you understand, since ethics works with principles. In the definition, I've used the word principles, and principles are bound to be universal. Ethics, by and large, will work like sciences. So like the principle of nature, ethics should also develop its principle for its own conduct. So ethics will be universal, but universal does not mean absolute. Absolute is a different thing. Absolute is that in all contexts, the same will apply. But universality does not mean in all contexts same will apply. Whenever that context arises, then the same will apply. So if administration is lenient to person A, the administration should also be lenient to person B in the same context, not otherwise. If A and B has different context, then leniency will not be given to both in the same way. If leniency is always given, that is absolutism. So universality does not mean absolutism. Universality has to be aligned with the free will of human beings. And with the free will of human beings will take the judgment call as to what to do when. But then you have to be consistent. If you have chosen to do A or act X in a particular context, whenever that context arises, wherever, with whomsoever, you will do the same thing. So if that context is the same with different people at different time in different place, your action will remain the same. That is the idea of universality, meaning the same applies in the same context. But when the same applies always, that is absolutism. Universalism is not to be confused with absolutism. The nature of ethics I'm giving you is universality. But since you see, in sciences, the same applies everywhere because it doesn't differentiate between a marker and a ball. So if the marker falls, ball also falls, the same principle applies to both. But since human beings have a particular context, they have aspirations, they have different rights depending upon the context. Different people have different legal rights. Like, for example, women enjoy rights under the Maternity Benefit Act, which the male population do not enjoy. So the rights context can also be different. Human beings are different by nature, by design, sometimes by their history, in their context. So we cannot apply the same thing everywhere. So ethics laws will not work exactly in the same way as the law of nature. We having free will and wisdom. So ethics will have the principle of universality. It will have the principle of contextuality, meaning when the context change, then we change our position. Contextuality is different from relativity. Relativity is from person to person. When the person change, my principle change. That is relativity. And when the context change, our position change, that is contextuality. So if the different person comes in the same context, even then I will do the same thing. That is contextuality. But if the person change and my principle change, that is relativity. So ethics is not relative. Ethics is contextual, all right? Now there's a third principle, which is extremely important. Ethics develops obligation. And here, you will have to be very attentive to catch this part. Ethics has a characteristic of obligation, meaning to know the Brahma is to be the Brahma. How will this work? If you know, and if still you're not acting on the truth, then you can't be the Brahma. But the principle says to know the Brahma is to be the Brahma. That means if you know the truth, there is inherent obligation in you to follow the truth. That's why when you know the Brahma, then you be the Brahma, because you become like Brahma, you shed your evil nature. Correct? So if you know the principles, then there is some obligation to follow the principles. Understand? Now, how does that work? How will that happen? And this is our entry point to the topic of integrity. I will briefly tell you something which is not very important from exam perspective, but then very important again from the perspective of catching hold on the subject. You must have heard of Copernicus revolution. Have you? What is it? The Copernicus said that the world is not geocentric. The world is heliocentric. But it is not all that. That is Copernicus revolution. There are other things associated with Copernicus revolution. What you're saying is absolutely correct. Previously, it was thought, especially by the Christian world, that everything revolves around the earth, and we are special people. God has sent us on a special planet, and this is the center of our universe, and everything revolves around us. But that's not the case. The world is not geocentric. The world is heliocentric. But that's not all what Copernicus revolution is. Copernicus revolution is much more than that. Try and understand very carefully what I'm telling. The experience that anybody has on the earth is not only because of existence of an external world. The seasons that we experience, the day and night that we have, is that only because the sun exists out there or the stars exist out there? No. The experience that we have on the earth, day and night and season, is because of rotation axis of earth and axis parallelism. You know, the axis is tilted and earth revolves in a way that the axis is always parallel to its previous position. Earth do not revolve like this in the axis. Earth revolves like this. And when you revolve like this, then the plane, some part of the earth comes above the plane, and then it goes to the other side of the sun, it comes below the plane. And because of that, there's difference in duration of day and night. If the axis was not tilted and parallel, then you would have every day 12 hours and every night 12 hours, if that was just rotation. But because of tilted axis and revolution, you have season. Point is that the experience that we have on Earth, or the experience of Earth itself in terms of its vegetation and climate and seasons and other things, is because of its own action, is because of its own orientation, not because of the presence of sun alone. So external factors are there. Of course, it is there. But the experience of Earth is because of the orientation of Earth. Correct? Now, this idea of Copernicus revolution has been brought into philosophy and then into ethics by Immanuel Kant. And he says that just in the line of Copernicus revolution, experience that a man has is not only because of principles outside. If you teach justice to somebody and tell what is honesty, what is temperance, of course, that is going to have an effect on him. But there's got to be something inside us. And that helps us to follow the path of righteousness. It's not just somebody has told us principle and given us the idea of goodness and given us the idea of righteousness and highlighted the importance of ethics or following ethics. There got to be something inside us. We are moral agent, not because of abstract principles of justice, but inherently there are got to be something in our orientation, in our soul, in our psyche, that makes us a moral agent. Now, this is Copernicus revolution in philosophy by Kant. And this idea, of course, conscience, of course, Omkar, and conscience and other things. But there is something inside human beings that bind us with the principle. So far, we have talked about principles. So far, we have talked about ethics. Ethics are standards and principles, right? That tells us the idea of right and wrong and judge and guide human behavior. So those are the abstract things outside us. We haven't created. Somebody will tell us the idea of right. Then we got to understand the idea of right. We got to understand the idea of justice and other virtues. But there has to be something inside us that will help us receive it very well. For example, in telecommunication, there's a sender and the receiver. If the sender keeps sending to the walls and the trees and the mountains, then there'll be no signal that will be received. There got to be something in the receiver that will receive the signal, and then the communication can happen. So just because somebody has taught us some philosophy, so we're not just because of that we are following it. We are following it because we got something in us. And we got those things that we're going to talk about what creates obligation. And then ethics gets implemented because of those obligations. And that thing, boys and girls, is integrity. So we have done the first definition of ethics. I'll take you through the second definition of integrity and the intricacy between ethics and integrity. Integrity refers to coherence among thought, speech, and action. Important thing is even in adverse situation. Meaning what you think, coherence among thought, speech, and action. Meaning what you think is what you say is what you do. You're not afraid. The principles that is developed in your mind come out in your action. So what you think, meaning what you have in your mind, and those are from the principles and standards. What you have in your mind is what you talk about, and what you talk about is what you do. Meaning if you have in your mind the principles, then you will talk about the principles and you will act on the principles. Meaning principles will get implemented through you. You understand? You're getting what integrity is? Integrity is a tool for implementation of ethics. Integrity is an infrastructure in us that allows the principles to get implemented through us. Our thoughts will be subsumed, will be determined by our cognition, by our principles. And when our thought is in alignment with our speech, and that's in alignment with our action, that is called as integrity, even in adverse situation. Now, the thing is that even in adverse situation, you're acting on your principle. Why are you holding so tight on your principles? Why are you not letting it go? You have to hold tight on your principles because then otherwise there can be no integrity. And what will make you hold tight on your principles?
Moral conviction.
Yes, correct. Conviction. But before that, I want to come back again here and tell you that ethics develops obligation. There is something inside us that when we receive the principles in us, then that gets binded with us. And when it gets binded with us, that is so strongly binded that we are obligatory to implement those principles. So the thing which is inside us, that is to do with integrity. And that those things, those set of things develop this strong obligation. And those strong obligations are so strong that we do not give up even in adverse situation. If that strong obligation is not there, then integrity will also be not there. Right? So that is what integrity is. Now I'm going to tell you that in philosophy, this has been identified since time immemorial, that human beings are good by nature. Socrates was the first one to talk about it, that human beings by nature are good. Plato said that soul comes with a drive to seek the truth and pursue the good. Meaning somebody tells us what is good, then our soul will jump in that direction and we will be swift in following the good. The same idea, if you know the Brahma, then you are the Brahma. If you know the truth, then you are the truth. Why? Because if you know the truth, your soul will move you strongly in that direction. Because soul comes with a drive to seek the truth and pursue the good. What are these things? Human nature or soul or conscience or any idea of dutifulness or sense of justice, that's something to do which is inside us. So the point is that human beings are well placed to practice ethics. Practicing ethics is native to human beings. Practicing ethics is natural for human beings. And since we carry those infrastructure in us, so we have integrity. So we follow the principle. So we are happy to practice ethics. So morality can be the source of happiness. So here are a list of ideas of different philosophers. They talk about the same idea. The idea is the goodness of human nature. And that is the basis of integrity. Integrity is taking action according to your principle. Why will you take action according to your principle? Because you're destined for it. You're designed that way. That is your basic nature. That is your inherent characteristic. Had that not been the case, then even if you know the principle, you won't follow the principle. Correct? But that's not the case. We are designed to follow the principle, and there are multiplicity of ideas, some of which you must memorize. They're both Indian philosophers, Western philosophers. Aristotle has said that humans are naturally inclined towards virtue and happiness. The idea of John Rawls is that human beings are born with sense of justice. And I'll explain some of you later on as well, but you have to memorize them at this stage. The idea of Rousseau is that humans are naturally good, and the evils in humans come from society. Society corrupts them. Idea of Kant is that moral law is innate in human reason. Idea of Confucius, Dalai Lama, Viktor Frankl says humans possess an innate drive to find meaning, even in suffering. His famous book with the title, Man's Search for Meaning. present this idea. You can talk of Nelson Mandela. Adam Smith also have talked about sympathy of human beings. Buddha says all beings possesses Buddha nature, the potential for enlightenment and compassion. The idea of Adi Shankara is also the true self, the Atma, is identical with the supreme reality, the Brahma. So we are having the godly nature. That's also the idea of Indian philosophy. Same of Swami Vivekananda. You can talk of Gandhi, but you have to memorize at least some of them verbatim. Whenever you have to highlight the goodness of human nature, and when you have to talk about integrity. Now, this is the link that if principles are given, we are designed to follow those principles. So we are naturally inclined to move towards it, and that develops an obligation, and that develops integrity. Correct? So integrity, the basis of integrity is not just ethics. The basis of integrity is we ourselves. That's the Copernicus revolution in philosophy. Our experience is not just because of external world. Our experience is because of our own orientation. This is what science also tell you. And the famous example that Kant used in his book, that for a yellow, beautiful lily flower, you're moving towards the lily flower, looking at the beauty, the very bright yellow color of the flower. But when a bee comes to the same lily flower, bee doesn't look yellow. Bee doesn't, because for bee, the color is not yellow. You know that. Different animals look at different intensity. Their eyes are designed, retina is designed for different wavelength and intensity. So for bee, it is actually black and white. It doesn't look that bright, but the bee still comes for different reason. Correct? So the reality of bee is decided by the bee's orientation. Reality for us is decided by our own orientation. That's for science. But talking of the same idea in context of ethics, our reality is decided by our own orientation. And that orientation are these. Integrity comes from many, many things. Many things. Some of the things are mentioned here. Integrity comes from reason, human reason. And when we reason about things, when we can do critical thinking, when we analyze things, we get clarity of ideas. When we get clarity of ideas, we get conviction. And when we are convinced about something, then we are ready to do it, implement it, come what may. In the confusion, you do not take chances, because what if you're wrong? But when you're absolutely clear about something, and after that you develop conviction, with conviction you develop courage. Because when you're 100% sure about the rightness, about the goodness of an action, you can give your life for it, because you will know that it is for a moral cause. Till the time it is not very clear to you that what you are doing is for the moral cause, you may not be attempting it. In the state of confusion, action doesn't come. Action comes with courage and conviction. Courage and conviction comes with clarity. Clarity comes with reason. Who holds reason? We hold reason. Reason is part of human nature. So integrity comes from us. As Kant has remarked, morality comes from within. It comes from within. We are the holder of reason, and our reason analyzes situation externally. It gives us clarity, and that becomes the cause of our action. And integrity is what is the action-oriented element in ethics, integrity, and aptitude. Action can also come from some kind of obligation, and that obligation can come from conscience. Conscience is a term I haven't used so far. I will use in tomorrow's class, but conscience is our innate understanding or sense of right and wrong. Human beings are born with some kind of orientation. Human beings are born ready. From these things, when you will go home and memorize them, you will learn a lot. And tomorrow, I will ask very, very ruthlessly the content in the PPT. If you're planning to attend class offline, please come prepared. Plato has said, soul comes with a drive to seek the truth and pursue the good. Now, this is written in a philosophical language. And this philosophical language uses soul. Psychological language uses conscience. Conscience, drive, you understand, what's a drive? Yeah, mechanically, the drive in a mechanical, it's a force. It's a kind of that uses force in a particular direction. Drive is an instrument that runs like a motor, and it will give you a particular axle velocity, and it will operationalize it. So Platonic languages, soul come with a drive to move in a particular direction. Or a psychological language is conscience gives you obligation to be inclined in a particular direction. So you're not acting, your conscience will hold you and will move you in a particular direction. That is a kind of drive, the language that Plato was using. So it will give you nudge in a particular direction to act. Your own nature will drive you to act. If somebody is suffering in front of you, somebody is whining and crying, to whatever capacity you have, you will reach out and help. You can't be sitting like a dead duck looking at somebody suffering. You can't. You will never have peace until the time you help the person to some limited capacity, whatever you can at that point in time. So when you are looking at the external world, there is something operational within as well that is driving you in a particular direction. And that thing, psychologically, we call conscience. Conscience is our inner sense of right and wrong. So when our conscience is guiding us that what is right, what is wrong, we tend to move. We feel obligated to move in the direction which is right. All right. There could be other things. There could be respect. Because we are rational creature, we have respect for reason. Respect for reason creates dutifulness towards laws, towards commandment. There are other elements in us which are, for example, emotion. Emotion actually is a source of motivation. We feel motivated to act when we feel something. We are motivated for an action depending on our feeling. For example, if you get a cut in the finger, you will do something extremely, all business has to stop, and you will do something about the cut in the finger, won't you? Because A, you are feeling the pain, and B, because of the survival instinct, you have to stop the blood flowing. So when you feel the pain, then the survival instinct in us, the problem-solving machinery in us gets activated to solve the problem, correct? So when we have emotion, then we are most motivated. Rather, it will be right to say that emotion is the source of motivation in human beings. Charles Darwin has said that emotion has helped human beings in the process of evolution. Plato has said emotion is the basis of all learning. You see, successful people, they had some kind of intense emotion at some point in life. Through failures or through traumatic experience, Plato became himself the artistic, with vivid visualization author that he is, a writer, a philosopher, because of a traumatic event, the execution of Socrates, which Aristotle never faced. Aristotle was never traumatized in his life, so he was more moderate in his writing. He was not using that visualization or that vividity in the writing. His writing was more practical and dispassionate. People who experience emotion, they have intense motivation. Motivation rather comes from emotion, and emotion is in us. So integrity is also sourced from our emotions. When we feel motivated, then we act, correct? And then there could be other things like belief. Belief also develops responsibility. If you believe that you're the elder, if you believe that you have responsibility for your siblings, then you will act accordingly. If you believe that as a public servant, you have to do public service, then you will act accordingly, right? If you believe that as a corporate, you're a trustee and you have to take care of your workers and laborers, then you will act accordingly. Your belief also develops responsibility, which is also the source of action or integrity. So the second term in the title is integrity. And integrity is giving effect to the principles. Integrity is harmony in thought and action. So thought comes from your principles. And when you give effect to your principles, that is called as integrity. But the question is, how does this translation happen? This translation happens, meaning you will never lose on the principles. The principle will dictate your thought, the principle will dictate your speech, and principles will also dictate your action. And that too, even in adverse situation, meaning you have got hold of principle and you are never giving up. So I'm trying to explain why you are never giving up and how come you can become the man of integrity. You're never giving up because you're designed to hold on to principles. And those designs are within you. And they are your reason, your conscience, your respect for the reason, your emotion, your belief, and there could be other things that I will add on later on. So you are designed to get hold of the principles, so you are not giving up. So you are designed to become man of integrity, to implement ethics. All right. So that's the brief understanding of integrity. Now I have my notes here, and students from the foundation class will already have worked these things out, but I'll take you through them once again, because I don't believe 100% content retention might be in case of you people as well. And there are others. So I'll take you through this, and then we'll do some questions that will be new for everybody. See, here I'm trying to link ethics and integrity. By and large, you have a broad contour idea of what ethics is and what integrity is. Ethics are principles. You have to go home, memorize 4 boxes of principles. And those principles have a stated goal. They are principles of right and wrong. Principles tell you what is right, and you now have understanding of right. Then ultimate understanding of right is that of the sun. Inclusion of all. Psychologically, that is conscience. Going with one humanity, considering all as yours. So that is about ethics. Now, there's got to be something in us that we will not only imbibe this whole idea of ethics, but also work on it. So I have also told you what is that idea. The infrastructure in us is of reason, of conscience, of emotion, of belief, and respect for reason, of habit, and there are other things that I'll add up later on. So we are ready. We come prepared, ready to follow ethics. We are naturally inclined to become virtuous. That is the idea so far. Now, a little bit of discussion on, once again, on these two terms, ethics and integrity. Ethics or integrity, as is written here, integrity gives effect to ethics. This comes from the definition of integrity, harmony among thought, speech, and action. So when you act according to your thought was according to the principles. So you have given effect to the principles. Integrity gives effect to ethics. Integrity safeguards ethics. Will you agree? Because ethics was always at the risk of getting lost. Maybe you will think, but you will not speak. Maybe you'll speak, but you will not do. But you are going all along with the principles, so you are safeguarding principles. You're safeguarding ethics. Integrity ensures moral intactness. This is a phrase I quite often use, and this is a very important phrase because this is the beginning of solving of any case study. Any case study comes with a dilemma, and in dilemma, you have a contradiction, a conflict between two standards. And when two standards conflict, I told you what is the right thing to be done. You have to memorize your PPT and come in the next class. It's going to be very, very helpful, and you will rock the exam. The test series here and the final exam, trust me. What is right? Balancing the interest of all is one of the idea of right. If you do this, then you're doing the right thing. So when there are two standards, then balancing them, or justice, idea of justice is, when you hear justice, what you also hear simultaneously. Synthesis, correct. Justice is synthesis. So when there are two standards which are seemingly conflicting, then with the idea of justice, you have to synthesize. You have to balance the interest of all, because some people will get tied up to one standard. Some people will claim the other standard. For example, suppose there's a conflict in the case of water pollution and idle immersion. Some people will claim their right to religious sentiment, and some people will claim their right to pollution-free drinking water. So if there are two standards conflicting, then two aspirations are also conflicting. Two interests are also conflicting. And what is the right thing to be done? Right thing to do is to balance the interest of all. Right thing to do is to exist like a sun for the solar system, to be all-inclusive, all-encompassing. That is the ultimate idea of good that any philosopher has presented, that comes from the book, The Republic of Plato. That is the ultimate understanding of good. And these are the ways to get there. So when we practice ethics, that means when we follow integrity. Integrity is action. So in our action, care has to be taken that the goodness of ethics or the idea of right is also kept intact. So in our action, we have to ensure that we are working with moral intactness. Moral intactness means different values, they align with each other. They inform each other. They shape each other. They do not contradict each other. They do not eat up on each other. They do not bulldoze each other. Rather, they live in harmony with each other. That means morality, all moral values, all moral virtues are intact. Meaning you do not go with one compromising the other. That's not how the sun works, shedding light on some and not shedding light on others. It gives to all. The moral intactness is that you serve the interest of all, you go with all standards. So one of the idea of integrity is also moral intactness. What is integrity? Integrity is acting. What do you act on? You act on principles, but there could be plethora of principles. So it can be the case that when you're acting on the principles, two principles are seemingly different. For example, in case of RTI, for transparency, you have to give information. In the case of for national security, sometimes you have to withhold information. So what do? You go with transparency or national security. What do you do? Justice is synthesis. Transparency must create space for national security. National security should not bulldoze transparency. So all information should not be hidden in the name of national security. That is moral intactness. One standard should not bulldoze, eat up, erode other standards. All standards should remain intact. That means synthesis, harmony, balance. That is justice. That is good. That is right. That is ethics. And that's what integrity has to do. Correct? Integrity, then it is written that values live through integrity. It is linked to this idea. If moral intactness is not there and only some values are always prioritized over other values, then some values will die out, will get eroded, will lose its meaning. So values live through integrity. Integrity ensures consistency in application of ethics. Integrity ensures consistency. You get this part? Consistency, meaning what? Universality and contextuality. Whenever a particular context arises, it will always apply. Because that is the characteristic of ethics. Because that is the characteristic of science. So you always have to do the action whenever the context arises. And you never fail on the principles. That is what it is written here, consistency. Integrity operationalizes ethics through moral character in individuals. Operationalizes ethics. To operationalize means to bring something to its full potential. Self-actualization, correct. So ethics comes to its full potential, meaning what is the potential of ethics? To bring human well-being. That is the potential of ethics, what ethics can do. And that potentiality is achieved by actual action. So it's written here that integrity operationalizes ethics, correct? Ethics prompts conscience. People who have attended foundation class will understand this very well, but please be patient and be kind to others. And let me take some time to explain this part, that ethics prompts conscience. Conscience, although we haven't used this, explained this phrase here today, I'll do it tomorrow. Conscience is our innate understanding, innate sense rather, of right and wrong. So when we are born, we know certain things already. Nobody has a taught. Teach those to us that do not kill a human being. If you ask any person who has no exposure to the law of the land, to constitution, to any kind of social events, he will also say it's not proper to kill any human being. Things which are innate, which are inborn, that thing comes from conscience. Conscience is the source of our innate understanding or sense of right and wrong. Human beings come naturally prepared in this world to practice morality. That is a psychological understanding. That's also philosophical understanding. So that thing psychology calls as conscience and philosophy calls as soul. Ethics prompts conscience because ethics are standards and principles of right and wrong. How do we get to know right and wrong? Yeah, you're right. But we get to know right and wrong initially by our sense of right and wrong. And our sense of right and wrong is called as conscience. So ethics will prompt conscience. Prompting something means to call and do the task. When you are confused in your standard, you will take the help of your conscience to build the right standard. Ethics prompts conscience. So conscience is kind of originator of ethics. Morality comes from within. You look inward and get to know what is right and wrong. So you take the help of your conscience, psychologically speaking. But there's a very important line written here. Integrity actualizes conscience. Actualize also means to bring something to full capacity or fully operationalize something. That is actualized conscience. Integrity actualized conscience. This is a very crucial point, and I'll hold on to it for the coming 10 more classes as well. Integrity actualized conscience. Our capacity to practice ethics is conscience. And our capacity to practice ethics increases when we act more and more. This is what it means. What is integrity? Integrity is action. And when we act, then our capacity to act increases. Conscience is our capacity to act morally. So when we act, then we can act more. When we do little, then we realize that we have capacity to do more. And when we keep on doing and doing and doing and doing. There are examples that you know about mountain man. Initially, he did not know actually he will be able to pull it off, cut the entire mountain. But when you are persistent, then your endurance, your courage keep on increasing. And then you're able to pull off a humongous task that you were never sure previously that you will be able to do or not. Right? Gandhi also had the same thing. Gandhi initially did experiment with truth, but gradually he came to that level when he became so conscientious and so courageful, and he became a man of such high, strong integrity that he could take decisions in a determined way when nobody was on his side. Very few people were on his side to call off the non-cooperation movement after Chauri Chaura incident. Imagine the situation of Gandhi. It was too difficult for him. There were political pressure and the pressure from the masses to not call off the non-cooperation movement. But he could bear that pressure. And he could clearly see the right and wrong. And he followed integrity. He never gave up on his principle of non-violence. This is what integrity is. Even in adverse situation, you do not lose your principle. That's what integrity is. And he showed that he's a man of integrity. Now, the thing is, how did he get there? He got there gradually. And if you read his autobiography, there are many instances mentioned from his childhood that he was practicing ethics already. So when you practice ethics and you take action, then your capacity to act even more increases. So your sense of right and wrong is unlocked. Initially, your conscience could be very rudimentary. And with very rudimentary, elementary understanding of right and wrong you might have. But when you act, you get the feedback, you get the learning, you get the experience, and with that, more conscience get unlocked. And when you act, you have more conscience, then you will be able to act more. Because if you see here, conscience is the input to integrity. Conscience, when it guides you, puts obligation on you. Then you act. When you act, it's written that your conscience further gets strengthened. So integrity gives a feedback to everything. I'm just giving a feedback on conscience, but every input will improve after action. So when you have a little capacity to act, you start acting. When you act, you get more capacity to act. You act more. When you act more, you get even more capacity to act. And this keep on strengthening your conscience, your integrity, your moral character. So this is the understanding that conscience develops ethics. Ethics prompts conscience. Conscience will tell you right and wrong. That limited understanding of right and wrong, you start acting. When you start acting, then your understanding of right and wrong will further improve. That's how things are linked up. The actual real picture I'll present in a mind map in tomorrow's class. When I've taught you in bits and pieces, then we can see the overall things as to how things are getting operationalized. But till then, you have to know things in bits and pieces to know it overall. Ethics implies knowledge and judgment of various values, and integrity perfects those judgments, develop moral expertise. There's an important thing written here towards the last. Ethics sets good standards for behavior. Ethics are about principles and standards for human behavior. They set good standards for human behavior. Integrity expands the standards of ethics. In the foundation class, I've highlighted on this point, and I will highlight this again, but you will have a better feel, I suppose, right now. Integrity expands the standards of ethics. Now, this is such an important line. Why do you think standards of ethics should gradually always get expanded? Yeah, to ensure moral intactness, but I will give you a better philosophical reason at this point. From this slide, what is right? Having a vision of inclusion of all is the ultimate understanding of the good or right. Living like the sun. Plato has used the metaphor of sun to explain as to what good is. And in that metaphor, the good is symbolically represented by the sun. And sun, like it presents things, the light and the energy and the vitality to all, that is how we should be living. So with whatever understanding of our conscience and our culture, our custom, we have developed ethics, it should always expand, always, to cover everybody, to bring good to all. And when it expands so much that it brings good to all, then that is the ultimate stage where it has to reach to. That is the ultimate end, the goal, the end game of ethics. So it must expand. It must expand. And the job of expanding that will be of integrity. Why? Because integrity is about action. And when you act, then you bring well-being. And you so act that you bring well-being to all. You should so act that you bring well-being to all. So you have to act in a manner that well-being comes to all. So if the principles are not there, then the principles will have to be created so that those principles comes into action, and those action brings well-being to all. Correct? So integrity invariably will expand the standard of ethics. I'll give you more examples, but because of paucity of time, I have to reach to a particular designed end of this class. So let me expedite things a little bit and bring you to this slide. The instrument to ensure integrity. I have told you that there got to be something in us. Let me remind you of Copernicus revolution. And if somebody asks you the reason why Earth experienced season, Earth experienced season because of its tilt, number one, axis parallelism, number two, and revolution around the sun. Revolution, number three. But also because of the sun. So the experience of season is because of something which is internal, inherent in Earth, and because of the outside world. So now the question is, what makes us moral? What makes us hold on to the principles? So that reason will be both internal and external. Reasons will always be internal and external. This is the first time I'm presenting it to you like this. And rest of the 10 classes also, in all discussions, this shade will always be there. When we discuss a thing, we discuss that thing internally, and we discuss that thing externally. This, in hindsight, the undercurrent of this is Copernicus revolution, to identify that things are the way they are, not because of only external world, but also because of their inherent orientation. So now, why are we potentially man of integrity? We are potentially man of integrity because of internal reasons, things that we carry with ourselves, the things that we are designed, things that the way we are built, the way we are designed to work, the way our soul is oriented, the way our psyche is developed. And those include certain things: reason, conscience, respect for reason, emotion, belief, habit. These are internal things. And these drives us towards integrity, towards moral action, and never giving up the principles. So if you're habitually practicing principle, that is also a reason of practicing the principles, always, even in adversity. But there are other reasons that they can develop integrity. Those reasons could be coming from society, or it could be coming from administration. They both will be external reasons. Okay, so there could be social influence. The syllabus has a topic called as social influence and persuasion. So it could be the influence of society in different ways. What ways we'll talk about later on, but different ways in which society can influence you. Society influences you by giving you reputation. If you do good things, then everybody think that you're a virtuous person. Reputation to a man always comes from society. So one of the social influence is reputation. Reprimand can also come from society, and the other things that can come from society. Ethical ecosystem of society, like the family, religion, panchayat, Anganwadi, youth club, they all are social institutions. And if the social institutions have ethics floating all around, then that is bound to impact you. Administration can impact. Constitution, Article 17 can impact your behavior. Article 14 can impact your behavior. Rule of law can impact your behavior. Code of ethics, code of conduct can impact the behavior. Depending upon whether protection is given to whistleblower or not, you can decide whether to act or not. You understand whistleblowing? Whistleblowing is to red flagging the act of corruption within the organization. So you go against your own organization, highlighting the act of corruption. But it is a test of your integrity, because you could be fired and there could be professional repercussion of whistleblowing. But you see, that is a test of integrity. Whether you will act on the principles or not, even in that time of adversity, that depends upon whether protection has been given to whistleblowers or not. Do we have Whistleblower Protection Act in India? We have. Okay. So that is an administrative factor as whether you will act or not. Access to justice in case of denial of promotion, in the case of suspension, can you go to the tribunals for grievance redressal or not? Those are important administrative factors that will decide whether you will act or not. A good work culture, a culture that sustains honesty and transparency, a culture that may also encourage whistleblowing. Similarly, audit, vigilance, regulation, accountability, probity, transparency. These are the topics mentioned in syllabus. Gradually, you'll get a grasp on it if you keep on looking at the syllabus, but you have to memorize the slide before coming to the next class. These are the factors, administrative factors for your action. If the system is supportive of you, if the society is supportive of you, and your psychology is always supportive of you. So those are internal and external, or to say psychological, sociological, and administrative reasons for integrity. Now, we are well placed now to act. Okay, so this is a brief. idea of development of integrity. Before we take up some question and move towards aptitude, I have to tell you what comes out of integrity. What comes out of integrity would be many. And I have a habit of calling it as a downstream of integrity. What we discussed earlier in the previous slide was the upstream of integrity, what goes into the making of integrity. You see the arrow coming from both sides. What goes into make development of integrity, these are the upstreams. Now, once you are the man of integrity, then what is the downstream of it? What comes out of it? Meaning when you practice integrity, what do you do to yourself and to others? When you practice integrity, then first and immediate thing that comes out is moral consistency. Moral consistency is what gives the character to ethics of universality. Remember, Socrates wanted to develop ethics in line with natural sciences, and he used to call ethics as practical science. And they all had this desire of having a kind of characteristic of science in development of moral philosophy. So for that, you need to act on principles. And for that to be true, your principles must act consistently. Just like every time I drop it, every time it will fall. Every time. So if you are the man of integrity, and if the system is having ethics in society, I must be given reassurance that whenever I need help, I seek help, I will get help. Because if the system is compassionate, then it will help me. So it will work with just as consistency as the natural system works. Whenever I drop it, it falls. Whenever. If somebody gets dropped by this building, each time the person, whoever gets dropped, will get help. So whenever somebody needs help, he or she will get help. That is the idea. So if that is not the case, then ethics will not come at par with science. So sometimes you act, sometimes you don't act. The chief thing that makes ethics a parallel to science is moral consistency. And you always, and that comes from integrity. That's the definition of integrity, that you hold on to the principle even in adversity. So integrity develops moral consistency. Moral consistency will give it the characteristic of universality. Correct, absolutely correct. And that will give it the nature of science. And that will make good upon what Socrates used to say, that ethics is practical science. Ethics can become science if it works consistently like science. But in sciences, these objects do not have soul. They don't even have free will because they don't have the soul. So they can't go anywhere according to their own wish. They don't have a wish. So they are restrained with the principles of nature. But we're not restrained with the principles of nature, right? But still we have to be consistent. Socrates used to say that human beings can choose good and evil, both. But we must choose good. If we always choose good and always avoid evil, then we work just like sciences. Just like science, there is consistency. In ethics, there will be consistency. So we always hold on to principles, then we always do the good and the right thing, and then ethics become consistent, just like the principles of nature. And ethics will have the nature of sciences. This is one immediate consequence when we practice ethics. This is the downstream. You have to memorize it. Exam के लिए बहुत important है सब कुछ जो मैं बता रहा हूँ. Now, when there is consistency, that consistency itself brings many things. Possibility of a moral order. You know, I told you in the beginning of the class that Thales said that there is a material order, meaning everything is made up of same thing. But he proposed, based upon the knowledge he had and the reasoning he could apply, that was water. Because, the Greek society, they are all surrounded by water. And the river from the African continent flows into the Mediterranean Sea. And they had the knowledge of the polar caps northwards. So they were surrounded by water. So it was a natural choice for Thales to choose water as a contender. But the idea is that they realized, or they had this intuition of material order. Everything got to be made up of same thing. This was the idea. This was their intuition. So the question was, if there is a material order, can there also be moral order? Meaning, if everything is unified by the same common material, can the human society be unified by same common principles? Things will get unified by same common principles if the principles can be applied consistently. And it is integrity in us that allows the principles to be applied consistently. So moral consistency also means a moral order. Secondly, when you apply principles consistently in different contexts, then what happens is different virtues keep on getting developed. For example, if you consistently give respect to others, that develops virtue of tolerance. If you consistently give due to others, what will that develop? Justice. If you consistently consider the context of others, that will develop fairness or impartiality. If you consistently feel the suffering of others, that will develop a value called as empathy. So all other virtues are a special case of
Integrity.
integrity. Correct, Saritha, correct. All other virtues are special case of integrity. Integrity is acting according to the principle. And there are multiplicity of principles. So when you act according to a particular principle, that's a particular virtue. Act according to another particular principle, that's another particular virtue. Correct? But all the principles should be harmonized. So all the virtues must also be harmonized. Okay, so this is also the downstream, what comes out of integrity. When you become a man of integrity, you also become a man of many, many virtues. Internal consistency and harmony are the source of happiness. This implies that integrity is also the source of happiness. Gandhi had the definition of happiness same as the definition of integrity. Gandhi gave the definition that happiness is when what we think, what we say, and what we do are in harmony. But that's also the definition of integrity. What we think, say, and do are in harmony. That is integrity. We are happy when you are a man of integrity. You get that? Why should you be happy when you have integrity? There are many answers to it, psychological and philosophical. Soul comes with a drive to seek the truth and pursue the good. This is the purpose, predefined purpose of the soul. And when this purpose is served, then there is blissness inside, there's peace inside, there is balance in soul inside, there is no cognitive dissonance, there is no disharmony in thinking and action. So the thing is that you feel happy. Now, let me bring you to a previous point, and you will catch up even better now. In philosophical principles, in Epicureanism, there's a point written here: pleasure is the highest good. Why should pleasure be the highest good? Because pleasure comes from where? Happiness comes from where? From integrity, from doing the right, from implementing the principle. So why should not that be the highest good? That is the highest good we are saying. The highest good is integrity, is justice, is applying it in all contexts. It is moral consistency. It is moral order. That's the highest good. The same thing is written here. Pleasure is the highest good. Why? Because man draws pleasure from integrity. Man draws pleasure from doing the right thing. They all are the same thing. They differ in their appearance, but deep down, the roots are all the same. Socrates also said that happiness to man comes from doing the right thing. When we do the right thing, only then we are happy, because we come with a design to do the right thing. And when that design is worked upon, then we feel happy. So integrity ensures that we do the right thing. Integrity ensures that we act according to principles. So integrity is also the source of happiness. Okay, this is mostly on individual level. Then integrity does many things. It develops moral expertise, as written earlier. It actualizes conscience. What is conscience? Innate sense of right and wrong, correct. And ultimately, conscience is the psychological idea of the sun, the philosophical idea. Like the sun has to cater to all, conscience asks us to cater to all human beings, considering others as our other. Concept of one humanity is the idea of conscience, the all expansive, the maximum to which we can get, considering whole of humanity as one. That is the highest idea of psychology. This is as conscience, like the idea of the good or the sun, philosophical idea of Plato. They are the same thing. So it actualizes conscience. That is actually the consequence of integrity at sociological level. It expands the standards of ethics. When you expand the standard of ethics, you have become inclusive, you become tolerant. That is also the consequence of practicing ethics. And then in governance, you can talk about that integrity ensures rule of law. Integrity ensures what?
Moral intact.
Integrity ensures moral intactness, of course. Integrity ensures justice. Yes, Kiran, correct. Integrity ensures trusteeship. It ensures sarvodaya. It ensures antodaya. It ensures accountability. You haven't taken up the vocabulary from the slide. When you memorize and come prepared, you will be able to speak in the next class. You will go home and memorize the content. If you do not come content ready, you will feel that things are slipping from your hand. And the dream that was to do it in 10 class, it is possible. It is possible, but if you come prepared in the next class with the content, I'll give you more content, you go home and you come back with more content, prepared. When you are content prepared, then we can talk, then we can discuss, then we can go ahead towards answer writing. बिना उसके नहीं हो पाएगा. I'll just take 5 more minutes to discuss few questions asked on integrity. Look at this question of 2017. Great ambition is the passion of a great character. Those endowed with it may perform very good or very bad acts. All depends on the principles which direct them. Great ambition is the passion. What is passion? High emotion or strong emotion, correct. And emotion is a source of motivation. And motivation is one of the input to correct. You've seen how easy it becomes to write the answer. So integrity or passion is, of course, a marker of a great character. Those endowed with it may perform very good or very bad. So when you act, you can go in either direction. Of course, what will decide the right direction? Choosing the good. Principles, standards, ethics, all depends on the principles which direct them. So ethics has to be the guide of principles. As it is written in the slide, integrity needs ethics for its direction. So if ethics doesn't guide integrity, then the action can take us in a wrong direction, and that will be immoral action. So this question is basically telling you to discuss on the relation between integrity and ethics. Question पढ़ने में लगेगा कि कुछ भी पूछे हैं, ऐसा नहीं है, कुछ भी नहीं पूछते हैं. They always and always ask from the syllabus. You have to align it, veer it in the direction of the syllabus and the discussion and your class notes and this PPT. If you can veer it, turn it around, then you'll be very comfortable. और आपको ऐसा लगेगा ये कुछ भी और कुछ भी लिखोगे तो हर बार मेंस लिखोगे और हर बार 100 के आसपास नंबर आएगा. That barrier you will never be able to break. To go to 110, 15, 20, 25, or maybe the highest that ever somebody has achieved, that's 151. But बहुत अच्छा भी लिखोगे तो भी 100 के आसपास आके रह जाओगे. You will get the PPT abhi immediately after the class. Let me show you another question. The will to power exists, but it can be tamed and guided by rationality and principles of moral duty. What is will to power? Ambition. Ambition. That comes from emotion. Correct. It exists. Everybody has it. We all are sensuous creatures. We all feel things. We all have emotions and we all have desires. So the will to power, because of our emotion and desire, does exist. No doubt about it. That's the human nature. But it can be tamed and guided by rationality and principles of moral duty. That means what? There are many things that we haven't talked about. Yes, you're absolutely right. It can mean emotional intelligence. It could mean many other things. You can use the tripartite condition soul of Plato, that reason, emotion, and desire. Emotion and desire will create will to power. But as Plato talked about, supremacy of reason. And these two parts must be under careful check of reason. This is the idea of Plato in his book, The Republic. So reason have to guide. Why reason has to guide? Rationality and principles of moral duty. See, we have done in normative ethics, principles of moral duty. Okay, so we can take it up from there, and rationality we'll discuss tomorrow in the topic of moral reason. But rationality, just to give you an idea, rationality takes us to universality. And universality is what is morality. This is the idea of Kant. When you think in terms of rational ideas, rational principles, then you're free of emotions. When you are free of emotions, then you are free of inclinations. See, why are we inclined towards people? Because either we like them or we don't like them. But if all people are same to us, will we be inclined towards one or the other? No. So we will be same to all. When we are same to all, then what are we? We are universal in our approach. We are just the same to everybody. So when we are rational, meaning we are free of emotions, then we are universal. And what is universal? Only that can be moral. I have given you 3 characteristics of ethics. Universality is one of them. So you have to explain this, that rationality develops one of the characteristics of ethics. So you learn to practice principles in the same way. So you do not work with impulse, emotion, or desire. You get free of them. So questions will be in general plain English. You do not have to write answer in general plain English. Uska koi marks nahi hai. You have to write in a specialized way as you study theory in the subject. और कितना theory? कितना? 7 class में तो खत्म हो जाएगा. अनंत तो है नहीं. So you just have to hold on to it and then practice answers. I told you it will take you 11 classes, 2 test series, and 2 feedback session with your mentor. Then you will get ready for the mains. बहुत कुछ सीखने को नहीं है. पेपर छोटा है. But है छोटा का ये तो मतलब नहीं, कुछ भी नहीं है. जितना है, you have to do it. In looking for people to hire, you look for 3 qualities: integrity, intelligence, and energy. And if they do not have the first, the other 2 will kill you. If you don't have integrity, then intelligence does not matter. Why? Because intelligence needs guidance. And integrity is holding on to principle and working. That is integrity. So if you don't hold on to principle and work, then you will not be working for human well-being. You will not be working like a son. You will not be doing the right thing. You will not be working as a trustee for inclusion, balancing the interest of all and human well-being. वो नहीं करोगे आप. You will use your intelligence for self-interest, possibly. And you will use your energy for benefiting yourself or your loved one and dear ones, for your friends and family. What will ensure that intelligence and integrity and energy is for human well-being? No. Ethics will ensure. Ethics ensures that you do the right. And we have in our slide our understanding of right. What is right? Human well-being is right. Inclusion is right. Balancing the interests of is right. Justice to all is right. Working like a son is right. So whatever we do in whatever vocation, whatever endeavor, we have to work like this. And integrity ensures that we work like this. What implements ethics? Integrity. Integrity implements ethics. So if you do not have integrity, then your intelligence and energy is not guided for mankind. It is guided for something else. So it will kill you. It will kill you, destroy you, destroy the ethos, destroy the goal, bring corruption in the organization. It will destroy the whole ecosystem. So this is a general looking quotation by Warren Buffett. He's not even a thinker. He's a stock market expert, billionaire. But उसको लिखेंगे कैसे? लिखेंगे तो पेपर के हिसाब से ना, syllabus के हिसाब से, ऐसे ही लिखेंगे. Look at discussion. One of the tests of integrity is complete refusal to be compromised. Explain with reference to real life example. Of course, adversity is a test of integrity. One of the tests of integrity is complete refusal to be compromised. इसमें क्या लिख सकते हैं आप?
Gandhiji's exam of not cheating the exam.
Example से answer start नहीं होगा ना. Answer will start with theory. So give me some theory, then that can follow example. Yes, Dr. Saib, आप बताइए.
Integrity ensures morally.
नहीं, सरिता, आप डॉक्टर हैं? नहीं, मुझे पता है, हो सकता है डॉक्टर हो, आप पता नहीं मुझे.
No, sir.
Okay, डॉक्टर साहिब आपको बोल रहा था मैं. Integrity ensures moral intactness, of course. And for morality to remain intact, you do not have to compromise. You have to completely refuse to compromise, because that will take away the definition of integrity. What else will you write? Obligations. Integrity ensures strong obligation. Correct. Upstreams. Motivation, obligation, dutifulness, conviction. When you have these, then that will create a refusal to compromise. Very good. Good thread you have picked. Very good. Excellent. This is your first class with me? Very good. Doing well. So I'll show you one last question, then we'll end this session. Integrity is a value that empowers human beings. In the previous question, you use the upstream to integrity. Here, you should use downstream. Empower means whatever give you the power. Whatever give you power. And what is power? What is power in ethics? Acting like a son is the power. Ethics mein, that is power. Delivering justice is power. Bringing inclusiveness is power. Working for others is power. Being conscientious is power. Working like son is power. And you just have to prove that integrity gets you there. To the position of son, serving everybody at the top, being the leader, being persuasive, bringing reform in society, and you become conscientious that you start working for others as well. अब वो कैसे होगा? That is written in the notes. Integrity expands the standard of ethics. When you expand the standard of ethics, then you bring others into your domain. When you bring more standards, you bring more people. It's written in the notes that integrity actualizes your conscience. When it actualizes your conscience, you start seeing others as your other. And then you start working like a son. That is power. All the answers of all the question paper, of all the institute, of all PYQ will be from the notes. ऐसा हो ही नहीं सकता कि question पढ़ो उस समझ में आपको नहीं आया कहाँ से लिखे. So you have to attend the class, give 2 tests sincerely, sit for the feedback session, and know how to improve your answer. Job is done. इसमें अनंत काम नहीं है. So sincerely you have to take the class. When you come for the next class, do the PPT. In 7 classes, the content will end. Then we'll do just some case studies. उसके बाद उतने ही PPT को लेके रटना है, polish करना है, lose answers पहले लिखने हैं, get the feedback on lose answers, then sit for the test. Then get the feedback from your mentor on the test. Incorporate the feedback, make some feedback sheet. What are the things that you take care? Bas, that's it. So that amount of effort you will have to take. Coming to class, attending the class is not enough. You have to come through a threshold of effort. For example, if you shed light on the metal, electrons will not be knocked out. You know the threshold energy. So you are having pain living in this troubleful area, in this pitiful condition. But उतना काफी नहीं है, क्लास भी आना पड़ेगा. पर उतना भी काफी नहीं है, नोट भी रटना पड़ेगा. पर उतना भी काफी नहीं है, टेस्ट भी लिखना पड़ेगा. उतना भी काफी नहीं है, फीडबैक भी लेना पड़ेगा. So when you come to a threshold level, only then it will yield result. If you come to class and listen sincerely, फिर भी exam नहीं clear होगा. Result won't come out till the time you have put a threshold level of effort. And threshold level of effort is what I'm telling you. Come to class, memorize the PPT, write loose answers, write 2 tests, and then take the feedback from your mentor. That will bring you to threshold level. फिर मेंस में अच्छा नंबर आएगा, फिर मेंस क्लियर होगा. उसके नीचे रहोगे तो कितना भी पढ़ो, 10 साल भी पढ़ो, तब भी 10 साल फेल होगे मेंस में. जब तक इतना नहीं किया जितना मैंने बोला. ठीक है? See you all again tomorrow, prepared with content. Okay?